So talk about that a little bit. Like at UH, how much did you have to adjust after coming back from the shoulder surgery? Like what mechanically or training wise or anything, like besides the foam rolling and the maintenance, right? What kinds of things did you have to do to actually pitch again?
Well, the obvious stuff, you have, extensions, abductions, rotator cuff work, range of motion work, all the rehab stuff. Yeah. A lot of like body blade, a lot of dynamic kind of stuff that way. What's actually funny was, cause I think after I had surgery, I think month 6 was when I could start light throwing again. And because the intensity wasn't very high, it'd feel good, and then once you start getting to like 90 feet, I remember 90 feet, that, and then I think 90 feet was probably about month 8 after surgery. Again, it would have good days, it'd have bad days. But to me, I'm just thinking like, well, this is just part of rehab. This is just, what I need to do. And then like finally at month 12 or 13, I'm back on the mound, trying to work off the mound. I couldn't throw harder enough to break glass at that point. Just because it was a cycle of pitch, try to throw hard, which wasn't hard at all. And then get sore, be on the shelf for 2 weeks, and then kind of... So it was like that from month 12 to month 18. But, month 12 to about month 15 or 16. But it was a conversation with Tommy Heffernan that kind of started to make sense in my head because I was like doing rehab for so long, right? It's you go to wherever you're chilling on the exam table, you're checking out girls, right? Like you're doing all that kind of stuff at rehab. And so like Tommy was like, why don't you get under the bar and try and squat? Right? Because up until that point, it was all safety bar, right? Because I didn't want to get into that external rotation, right? It's like, why don't you try to get into underneath the bar? I'm like, okay. He's like, no, with a regular bar. So I'm like, I can't do that. He's like, no, just try. Right? And so like bar, right? And I'm like, okay, I can get into that position. Okay, it's not sore. And then why don't you try to get on the bench press? And I'm like, bench press, what? He's like, jump on the bench press, use a foam boat. Don't go all the way down, but just use the foam boat. Come down, push it up. Because up until that point, it's like 25-pound dumbbells, and you're going real limited range, real slow. And so he was like, did it hurt? I'm like, no. He's like, okay. And then after that point, then I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe I have to like start incorporating traditional lifting into like what I'm doing, right? It's no fault to anybody, but I got strong again. I started going back into the weight room, doing, regular stuff. And then now all of a sudden my 77 that I was throwing is 80. I'm like, oh, okay. 80 turns into 82, 82 turns into 86, 86. Now I'm like, oh, like I can actually play Division I baseball now again. So I actually give a lot of credit to Tommy too. Just because he was the one that kind of like put that seed in my brain about like, hey, maybe you should start training like a Division I athlete and not just doing rehab. No, that's huge. And there's so many things that I want to kind of mention there because, I mean, you know what I did, right? So that's where I think is the biggest disconnect, I guess, is that after rehab, right, let's call it, to like actual performance training, it's like, who's going to be in there? And that's what Tommy kind of did for you. And the good thing too is that Tommy's a baseball player, right? So he knows like, what your shoulder needs to encounter and all of that. But just the fact that you started to progress, because like there's only so much you can progress with that light weight, right? And then as you know, like how much power and explosiveness your throwing motion is and how much you have to decelerate and all that strength, right? That can be restored by just like benching, right? You don't have to bench in a way that's counterproductive, but you can bench in a way, shoulder press, all of these things in a way that's very productive to throwing. And that's a big kind of thing nowadays, right? It's like before when I was growing up or when we were growing up, it's like, oh, you don't want to bench press, you're a baseball player, right? But I mean, I'm not saying you should be doing like a triple, like that's not what I'm saying. You can work within a rep range of like 8 to 10, really fatigue the muscle, really get the range that you need, and then, be completely safe with it. So that's interesting to hear. So that, kind of bridging that gap, progressing more into strength training like a Division I athlete again. Now, think about it mechanically. Could you keep all the same mechanics, or did you have some restriction, or like what kinds of things had to change or adjust there? So the biggest adjustment was that I had to turn my 100% effort into 90.
Okay.
You know, so if I kind of kept the lid at 90, I could feel pretty comfortable with myself. Okay. I could still create force, create speed on the ball. Mm-hmm. But I had to change a lot of times with how my hands were separating. I felt like because I was a guy that, you know, was fairly inconsistent, there was a lot of chaos in my delivery prior to getting hurt, which I think was the contributing factor to why I got hurt. You know, big arm plus bad technique is usually not a very good recipe for arm health. Mm-hmm. But, you know, just being able to consistently like get my hand out at the right time, get my arms up in the right time, and then now finding that position and finding that arm slot to where I could, you know, throw quickly, move my arm quickly, and still not feel like I got hit by a bus.
Yeah, got it. That's very true. I mean, you think about it, as we start to age, right? Youth is not really on our side. So you start to train smarter, right? Mm-hmm.